All right, guys, here we go. So you are going to need to open up to a clean page in your sketchbook. One page will do the trick. And at the top of that page, I'm going to have you write the art element of, underneath it, you're going to write value, okay? The art element of value. And that's what that will look like. So feel free to pause this video at different points to be able to catch up and then continue. Underneath value, our definition is simply going to be the lightness or darkness of a color. So make sure you have all that information at the top of your page, okay? And what we're going to do is we are going to be exploring different ways to create value. So the next thing is I want you to put a rectangle about a finger or two tall across your page like so. You're going to divide the rectangle in half, and then each of those halves you'll divide as well like this, and that will give you 4 different smaller rectangles, okay? So you're going to need 4 different sections in that long rectangle. This is what's called a value scale. You'll label the far left, you're going to label it dark, and the far right side, you're going to label it light. For this value scale, we're going to be using shading, okay? So just classic, take your pencil, and in that dark rectangle, that first section, you're going to make it as dark as you can, just with shading. And as you work your way to the right, the values are going to get lighter. So your next step should be kind of a medium gray. Then the third one should be a light gray, and then your last one you're going to leave blank. That is an example of a value scale. So pause this if you need to, and go ahead and complete your shading value scale. You're going to add another long value scale just like the previous one. This one though we're going to be calling hatching, okay? Hatching is another technique used to create value, and with hatching you simply use lines in the same direction, okay? So we're going to start with the darkest one, and you're going to just choose a direction of lines, could be diagonal, vertical, horizontal, and just keep adding those lines to make that section as dark as you possibly can. Try to make it just as dark as your shading section. And then as you start to get lighter values, you work in the same direction, but you just add less lines. And then of course your last one is left blank. Add yet another value scale, just like the previous two. This technique we're going to call cross hatching, and this time you can use lines going in multiple directions, okay? And so here I've got diagonals in different directions, verticals, horizontals, so lots of different directions with your cross hatching. Like the name infers, the lines have to cross one another. Those are 3 techniques used to create value, or the lightness or darkness of a color. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is a very important thing to understand, which is called contrast. We're going to define this contrast by simply calling it striking a difference. Underneath your little contrast and definition, you're going to create you're going to create a rectangle that has 2 squares that are like pairs of squares. The first one we're going to be calling high contrast. You'll label the next one low contrast, and the last one no contrast, okay? So if contrast means striking a difference, high contrast, the 2 shapes next to each other will be very different. One's going to be very, very dark. You can use blending or shading. You can use hatching or cross hatching. Low contrast is going to be that they're different, but they're not that different. And so low contrast, you shall see that they are different, but they're pretty close. No contrast means that the shapes are exactly the same value and will look like that, okay? Contrast is one of the most important visual skills to communicate, and here's some images that clearly show some strong high contrast. Check them out. Alrighty, so you should have a page in your sketchbook that looks like this, fully finished and developed. And value is something we have talked about all year long, but we're going to continue to dive deeper throughout the spring semester. And as a young artist, one thing to really change your artistic game is to start diving deeper into working values. Whether it's your daily doodles or your assignments or anything you do, you can always add some type of value, and it strengthens your image because, as you will learn, adding value creates depth. It's very powerful to the eye, seeing that contrast. All right, thanks guys. We'll talk to you later.